Good morning, everybody. Can I welcome you to this meeting of Cabinet? The time is just after 9:30. The meeting is being held under the regulations which came into effect on the 4th of April 2020 in response to the COVID-19 situation. I'm Councillor Lucille Thompson. I'm Chair of Cabinet and Leader of the Council. A few housekeeping reminders, which I'm sure we all know quite well now, but just to remind you, can I ask everyone present in the virtual meeting that your microphones and camera remain muted and turned off whilst you're not addressing the meeting, and because this can reduce background noise and any unavoidable disturbances. Please can I also advise that the open parts of the meeting are being audio recorded and live streamed from the Council's website, and in addition the video recording of this meeting will be uploaded to the Council's YouTube channel shortly afterwards. Cabinet members and officers, where appropriate for each item, please use the chat function in order to indicate that you wish to speak or raise a point of order or explanation, and I will then invite you to speak at the appropriate time. Each member will be invited to speak in turn, therefore I would encourage all members to keep your contributions as clear and concise as possible. And when speaking, please refer to the agenda papers and make sure that you reference the page or paragraph number. Thank you. Please note that this virtual meeting is scheduled for 2 hours, but we have got a fairly hefty agenda. So do bear with us if we may have to overrun, because I don't think any of the decisions that we are taking today can really be carried over to an alternative date or a future meeting. Finally, if Cabinet members wish to leave the meeting at any point, could they please make themselves known to me through the chat function, and I will announce to the meeting that you are to leave. So can I please ask Nancy Graham, who's our Democratic Services Officer today, to undertake a roll call of members of Cabinet to confirm who is present this morning.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Thompson.
Present.
Councillor Cutler.
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Ferguson.
Good morning. Present.
Councillor Lerney.
Good morning. Present.
Councillor Murphy.
Good morning. Present.
Councillor Prince.
Good morning. Present.
Councillor Porter.
Good morning. Present.
And Councillor Todd. While we're waiting for Councillor Todd, I've just seen a message on chat that we might have to pause this meeting, unfortunately, because we're having technical problems with the audio stream, and the meeting needs to be live streamed for it to be legal. So if we could just pause for a few moments.
Okay, so we'll just have an adjournment for a few minutes whilst we sort out the tech. Hello everyone, just an update. We're having to pause the meeting for sort of 10 minutes or so whilst we sort out the tech. Apparently, although everything looks fine our end, nothing is being broadcast on the website, and to enable the meeting to be legal, it does have to be broadcast at the same time. So we're just sorting that out, and we'll come back to you as soon as we can. So thank you for your patience. Good morning, everyone. Again, we're back, and we are now legal. So thank you for your patience and hanging around. Nancy, we were just going through the roll call of members, and I believe we didn't have a response from Councillor Todd. So I wonder whether Nancy might like to call again.
That's correct, Chair. Councillor Todd, I can't see that he's on the call still, but can I just check, please? No, he doesn't appear to be here, Chair.
Okay.
But all the other members of Cabinet were present. Okay.
Thank you very much. Nancy, could you also read out a list of officers present?
Yes, of course. In the St Giles room today, we have Laura Taylor, Chief Executive, and myself, Nancy Graham from Democratic Services, supported by Matthew Watson, also from Democratic Services. Also on the call, we have Lisa Kirkman, Strategic Director Resources, Chaz Bradfield, Strategic Director Place, Richard Botham, Strategic Director Services, and other officers on the call are Dick Johnson, Adrian Fox, Jeff Coe, Terry Horner, and Gilly Knight. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Nancy. That's helpful. Members of Cabinet, we appear to have one apology for absence, which is Martin. Although we are trying to, Councillor Todd, we are trying to contact him. But apart from that, there are no apologies. So we move to item number 2, membership of Cabinet committees. Can I please ask members to agree a change of membership to the Kings Barton Forum and appoint Councillor Weir for the remainder of this municipal year, as set out on the agenda, the front page. Are we agreed?
Agreed.
Agreed.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Item number 3, declaration of interests. If there are any disclosures of interest to be made regarding the business, please can you use the chat function now that you that you have an interest and wish to speak. Councillor Porter, you're on. Your camera's come on.
Sorry, I was just going to declare it, but then you said on chat, so I'm just
don't worry. Yes.
County Council, it's a personal interest. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much. I don't believe there are any other declarations of interest, and when Councillor Todd joins us, we are expecting him. I suspect he would need to make the same one. Okay. Item number 4 on the agenda is requests from invited councillors to speak, and I have a number of councillors down to speak on each item on the agenda, as is normal, I will call you when we get to that agenda item and after that agenda item has been introduced. I'm assuming that's okay with everybody.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
Item number 5, minutes of the previous meetings. We've got 2 sets of minutes to agree, one on the 21st of October and one on the 10th of November. Cabinet, are you content that this is these are an accurate record of what took place at those meetings?
Agreed.
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 Agreed. Thank you very much. They've all been agreed. Nancy. Item number 6, public participation. We actually have had no members of the public registering to speak this morning. We have 2 members of TACT who will speak at the HRA item on the agenda, but no members of public. Item number 7, leader and cabinet member announcements. I have no announcements to make. I don't know whether any members of cabinet have. No, I don't believe we do. So as I say, we've got quite a hefty agenda, so we'll go straight into the main business. And the first item is number 8, general fund budget options and MTFS less exempt appendix. Now, we have got an exempt appendix, and I believe Councillor Miller wishes to speak on that. And if that's still the case, then we will obviously need to go into exempt for that part, but we will leave that to the end of the meeting where we have other exempt items to consider. So item number 8, Councillor Cutler, could you introduce the paper, please?
Thank you, Leader. I think it's quite important to put this budget paper in the context of the events of the past year. Back in February, we delivered a budget that was primarily designed to deliver our council plan, but it also addressed the previous medium-term financial strategy budget deficit cumulatively of £19 million through to 23-24, reducing this to 1.84 million with the first 2 years balance. And we also at the time created a transition reserve, recognising future uncertainty. At the time, of course, that uncertainty was around no clarity on future government funding, Brexit, and of course the hint at the time of an emerging COVID pandemic might cause a few problems. Of course, at the time, none of us could have predicted the extreme effects of the pandemic. In April, the Prime Minister told us to spend what was needed and that government would cover the cost. But it soon became clear that the catastrophic fall in income, particularly of car parking revenues and commercial property rents, plus the extra expenditure required, meant that an emergency budget was necessary. The predicted deficit of 10.7 million, more than a third of our total budget, was helped by a government contribution of 5.6 million. The remaining deficit of 5.1 million was addressed in our September revised budget. Q2 results, the next paper on this agenda, showed that we were ahead of this revised budget at the end of Q2, but the recent lockdown and uncertainty about a new year spike, which may or may not happen again, will impact on this. So going forward to next year's budget and medium-term financial strategy, what is unique about the circumstances we're in is the difficulty in forecasting income. In a normal year, projected income has been relatively easy, and the likely variance between budgeted and actual is relatively small, a matter of a few percent either way. So generally, we've been able to have a high confidence in the outturn, so the key concern has always been to make expenditure balance against this predictable income. This year we have far less uncertainty about income. Officers have worked very hard on scenario planning, and we have concluded that the budget should be prepared based on an aggregate fall in income of 20%. But this has the potential for a far higher level of variance than in a normal year. Basing this budget on 20%, before the government spending review announcement, this would have led to a deficit of over £5 million, but this is now reduced to 3.7 due to the additional government support. We are proposing savings of £3 million, with the remainder funded from the transitional reserve created in last year's budget, specifically for this purpose. Our focus is still to produce a budget which will allow us to deliver upon the key priorities of the council plan, while recognising that there are regrettably some reductions in the services we can offer, and that fees and charges to our optional services must pay their way. By addressing this projected shortfall, we will continue to address the medium-term financial strategy, reducing potential deficits in the future. However, the huge uncertainty means a need for continual close monitoring and the potential that we will have to revise this budget maybe 2 or 3 times through this next year. I would ask the Cabinet to consider the recommendations and approve the specific principles from which we will derive the full budget to present to Council in February. Additionally, this paper has recommendations to address write-offs of outstanding debts that it is clear will never be recovered. So at item 11, there is the long-term debt associated with the Barfield Depot, which needs to be written off, and also at item 12, the non-domestic rates debts totaling 264,000, much of which relates to 4 to 5 year old debts. The long insolvency process has now reached the point where they're clearly irrecoverable. As you can see from the details of the paper, the budget process is uniquely challenging this year. I'd like to thank Richard Botham and the whole finance team for the incredible amount of extra work they've put into this process. It will be ongoing, as the degree of uncertainty makes it crucial for forensic monitoring as we go forward. So I commend this paper to Cabinet. And good to see the arrival of Councillor Todd.
Yes, welcome, Councillor Todd.
Hi there, sorry, I had a work thing that I needed to sort out, and I'm here now.
Oh, okay, could I just dial back a step and say, have you any declarations of interest to make?
Yes, as a county councillor, some of the issues overlap quite strongly with county council issues. For example, the county council is looking for a big increase in on-street parking charges across the county, and but it's a personal and non-prejudicial interest. Thank
you very much, and welcome to the meeting. Thank you, Councillor Cutler, for introducing that item. I've got Councillor Godfrey on my list who wishes to speak on this item.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I'm grateful for the opportunity to speak briefly this morning. Officers have done a very good job in putting together a paper to give options for dealing with the difficult challenges of the pandemic has brought to the council's finances, and to present a medium-term financial strategy. However, I'm concerned that this is looking far more in the short term rather than the medium term, which you may think inevitably is the case because of the significant challenges. But I think it is important that the medium-term strategy, which is meant to be the core of this paper, has to make a clear statement of how the council's finances are going to be maintained, and how those finances are then going to support the council plan. And while the focus is on next year's budget, the support for the council plan is not clear. If I can pick up a couple of specific points in section 5 of the paper, it calls on or makes a statement that we're going to maximise income from the assets, the non-operational property primarily of the council, and then goes on to suggest that one of the ways of maximising income will be to sell those assets. And I do hope that this will be reconsidered as a strategic option, because you cannot raise income by selling your assets, and that would be a very short-term error. And I do think that we should not be encouraging this type of thinking. The challenges facing the council of trying to reduce costs and improve efficiency are ones which I have to agree with. And section 10.4 outlines the challenge. And I think that it will always be a difficult choices to make. And I think the proposal does come up with some sensible ideas, with one notable exception. The use of a transition reserve, or any reserve, to bolster the revenue budget of the council must be avoided at all costs. It's okay to use it for short-term emergency funding, but this is meant to be looking out as an option that shows us on presenting a balanced budget. And if we're balanced budget is using up reserves, in this case to the tune of £600,000, I think that is a misuse of reserves. And as you can only spend reserves once, it is not a long-term or even a medium-term option. I also wouldn't want to go past this paper without taking account of the significant support that the council receives from central government. Some mealy-mouthed words from Councillor Cutler in his introduction suggested that the government was not supporting the council. Well, having already received something in the region of £8 million extra in the previous financial year from greater grants, more new homes bonus, more business rates, which closed this imaginary £19 million black hole that he and Councillor Todd keep on referring to. Since the start of the pandemic, the government is going to be giving the best part of £7 million to the council, with a very real prospect of even more money in the immediate future, which allows us as a council to achieve so much more. And I think it's this headroom that the government has given us by these grants that the council must use to lead the district out of the economic challenges of the pandemic.
Can I ask you, Councillor Godfrey, apologies for interrupting, but you've had your 5 minutes. I wonder whether you could bring your remarks to a close, please.
I will certainly do that, Madam Chairman. I think that's my key point is that the strategic document before you today does not have sufficient strategic thinking in it. We need to be looking in the longer term, not just in the next 12 months, to make sure that this council is using its assets properly to support the district to thrive. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Godfrey. Members of Cabinet, have you any questions on the paper? No. Have you any debate? Councillor Lerney.
Thank you, Chairman. I would like to endorse the contents of this budget paper. Clearly, we are facing a very difficult position. While we're being urged to take long-term decisions, we face massive uncertainty going forwards. I don't think we have any way of knowing what the financial situation of the council's likely to be in 12 months' time. All we can do is make a best guess and make prudent provision for that. At the same time, I think we should really welcome some of the provisions within this paper, which are around bolstering our local economies, our high streets, provision to proceed with Central Winchester in particular, whichever route forward we take. If we want to proceed with that in a timely way, we need to make decisions about that now and make that a priority. We also have a number of other projects which we're keen to progress, including the Bishop's Waltham depot industrial units and the Guildhall Cafe, both of which will return a positive income to the council, but do need some, again, a bit more investment up front. I think we should really be welcoming this paper while recognising those financial challenges we have, and not rely on some imaginary government pot of money that's going to turn up at some point in the future. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Lerney. Councillor Porter.
Thank you. I think actually Councillor Lerney's just said it. I think it's very hard to think, even we don't even know what's going to happen in our world next week at the moment. You know, they might even change the lockdown arrangements, or even next month, and let alone in the years ahead. And we've been trying to look at the worst scenario, a medium scenario, and the best scenario. And I think the one that Councillor Cutler has brought forward is realistic. But as he said, it may well need to change in the near future. And obviously, money that we spend this year affects money that we'll be able to have in the future years. So too often we are offered money and then the money doesn't come until the last minute, and we really do need to think prudently about our finances for this year so that we're in a good place to plan for future years. I do endorse the budget that we've been set today. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Porter. Any other members? Councillor Todd.
Thank you, Leader. Yeah, and it's interesting to have this discussion in the context of having been at the County Council and seen a discussion there about their finances. Let's not lose sight of the fact that the auditors refused to sign off the County Council's accounts in time for the legal deadline because they weren't certain that it was a going concern and had real concerns about the long-term sustainability of the council at all. And as I said there, and many people agreed with me, anybody who relies on the government providing a magic pot of money turning up is going to be disappointed, because the experience of local government at all levels is of ongoing restrictions of finance, of promises not being kept. Certainly the County Council is clear that the promise to do whatever it takes to support local government has not been kept, and I think it's prudent for us to take a similar principle. But I have to say, one of the things I like about this budget paper is that we are continuing to drive ahead with our agenda while also taking the difficult decisions that are required by the extremely challenging situation that we currently face. You know, as colleagues know, I'm the lead cabinet member for the movement strategy, and I'm very pleased to see that we're finding ways to support the implementation of that, because the evidence is that a proactive, positive approach to walking and cycling and ensuring that people can access our centres in ways that do less damage to the environment but continue to support local business is a real priority, and having the resource to do that in the context of delivering a lot of savings in other parts of the movement and parking part of our operations is something I strongly welcome. So overall, an extremely challenging situation in a context where a lot of other councils, including the County Council, are struggling much harder with their finances. I think we owe a debt of gratitude to officers for what they've done, and this puts us on a good basis for entering the coming year.
Thank you very much, Councillor Todd. Now, before I move to Councillor Cutler, who I know wishes to wind up the debate, can I just ask Councillor Horrell a question? I know you're on the line. Councillor Miller indicated that he wanted to speak on the exempt item on this paper. He hasn't joined the meeting, and obviously, do you know if he still wishes to speak? Because if he's not going to join the meeting, or perhaps he was going to join a bit later on, because we'll be taking it at the end if he does want to speak. Otherwise, we can do it all now. I wonder whether you could just indicate what the position is there.
Thank you, Councillor Thompson. Councillor Miller did want to speak. I see, as you've indicated, he's not on the line. So if we could reserve that opportunity to speak on those specifics in the exempt part, that would be kind. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. In that case, Councillor Cutler.
Thank you, Leader. I just really wanted to respond to some of Councillor Godfrey's points. I find it quite astonishing that he should suggest that we're not addressing medium-term financial strategy at the same time, and also to dispute the medium-term financial strategy presented in the 2019 budget by his administration, which does show a £19 million hole, and they were not addressing the medium-term financial strategy at the time, whereas in this case we are, because we recognise that the biggest hit to the economy is likely to be in this next year. Now, we can't be absolutely sure that we don't plunge, the country doesn't plunge into a very long-term depression, mainly because of the effects of Brexit. But we're assuming that the real hit to the budget and to the income will be in this first year, and that by taking action in this first year, we will actually be addressing some of the longer term financial, the longer term financial strategy. I take his point about use of reserves, and we have sought to minimise the use of reserves. But again, with this wide variance in our predictions on income, there is really no option but to make provision for using reserves if things turn out to be slightly worse. If they're greatly worse, as I've said, we will have to revisit the budget again. So that's fairly clear. I'm confident that this is a very good proposal, because it still maintains, as Councillor Todd pointed out, our commitment to our council plan, to the climate emergency, to improve services, to central Winchester regeneration, which all the business community have said are key to the recovery in the city. We need to be fleet of foot over the next year as circumstances evolve. And I'm confident that we will be able to do that. So I would ask Cabinet to support the recommendations in the paper.
Thank you very much, Councillor Cutler. We move to the recommendations then on page 24 and 25. We will have to leave recommendation 12 because that relates to the exempt item, which we will come to towards the end of the meeting. But so with that exception, Cabinet, are you happy to agree recommendations 1 to 11 on the agenda?
Agreed.
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 Thank you very much. Thank you. Those are agreed.
Agreed.
Thank you. Okay, we now move on to agenda item number 9, which is the HRA budget options and business plan, and it's on pages 59 to 84 of the agenda pack. Councillor Lerney, would you like to introduce the report, please?
Thank you, Chairman. The capital strategy and detailed budget will come to Council for approval in February, but today we're setting out the proposals for our ambitious 30-year business plan, which needs to precede that. While in the past Right to Buy has steadily reduced the number of council homes, this council is now turning a corner, and with the support of all sides of the council, and I think it's important to emphasise that this is a programme which is widely supported. Our home building programme is once again making a difference to the availability of homes to residents in our district on average incomes. Previously, the council has declared its intention to build 1,000 homes over 10 years, We are now able to demonstrate that we can fully fund that level of building in a prudential way and can acquire land to build on and pay for the associated nitrate mitigation measures. In addition, we propose to increase the resources available for retrofitting our homes in line with the carbon reduction agenda, which is central to our council plan, not only around carbon reduction, but with the aim of making our homes more comfortable and cheaper to live in. While this all requires a considerable increase in borrowing, it's important to remember that just like a domestic mortgage, this borrowing is not only assessed as to whether it's affordable, but it's backed by an asset which historically increases in value. As is shown in the projections, even at the end of our plan, our ratio of debt to assets is set to be 5% less than when the council initially borrowed to take back control of its housing stock. I think it's also really important to say that while new homes may make the headlines and give us photos with our hard hats on, looking after tenants remains central to the work we do as a housing provider. And we will continue to maintain our homes to the high standards our tenants rightly expect, and also continue to work on improving their customer experience. Our rents will continue to be set in line with government guidance, with a proposed rent increase of 1.5% in the current year. So I'd like to commend this business plan to Cabinet, and I'd also like to thank Dick Johnson for his sterling work in this area, which has given us far more clarity and assurance around our plans for the future. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much, Councillor Lerney. I now invite Monica Gill from TACT, who I believe wishes to say a few words.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I want to make it quite clear from the outset that any comments I make are my own personal comments and not that of TACT, because this paper has not gone to TACT membership. They've always been interested on what is in the HRA, and at the moment we're not getting that information. Mr. Johnson did appear at an asset management meeting recently, but it was not the full account. And I feel that at the moment, TACT are not getting, and as it is tenants' money, TACT are not getting the input that they would have always experienced in the past.
Thank you very much, Monica. I've taken a note of your comments, and I'm sure that Councillor Lerney will address those when she comes back on the. Oh, here she is. Yeah, of course. Yes.
Straight away, please, Chair. Yes, I think this is a problem that we're recognising, in that TACT aren't getting as much input as they have in the past. We've been working on getting as many TACT members as we can online, so that they too can have virtual meetings. I was due to meet Monica to talk about this and other issues last month, but unfortunately that was prevented by the additional lockdown. But certainly this is something that we're keen to address in the new year and look at how we can keep that input coming in. Certainly it's really good to have members of TACT at these meetings and others to discuss this. Clearly we'll be taking final decisions, if you like, on this when we consider the budget in February, and I would certainly expect that TACT will have much more involvement, be fully involved before those proposals come forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Lerney. I believe Mr. Light, you're on the call too. I wonder whether you wanted to add any comments at this stage.
Just that I back what Monica has said. That's all really at the moment. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. I now call on Councillor Horrell.
Good morning, Chair. Thank you very much for allowing me to speak, and I welcome that opportunity as always. As you all know, I'm an advocate for the housing team here at Winchester City Council. We have an outstanding record of delivering for our tenants across the district, and I congratulate the officer team and all they have done in the last year. It is therefore with huge disappointment I witnessed a Business and Housing Policy Committee recently that did not give the proper time, in my view, as it is designed to do in its terms of reference, to look at the forward planning on one of the key budgets for the council. Instead, we spent significant time on a historical review of activities which could have been presented in a public and/or a members' briefing. We had limited input from TACT, and I concur with the feelings from David and Monica that they've expressed this morning. We know that our efforts to engage TACT are really important. We've had limited input from them on this process, and this administration's efforts to engage the TACT team have fallen woefully short of where they should be. This is a message that I've been passing to you for the last year, but nothing has been done. We all know that tenant satisfaction is a key measure for us all. At that same meeting, we asked for the data to support the new housing targets. Who needs what type of accommodation and where? But this was unavailable. Today, we're approving some significant changes to the HRA budget, our approach to borrowing, a significant increase in borrowing, our viability assessment methodology, and residual value of housing. What is not clear is why these changes will collectively make things better for our tenants overall. I was so concerned I sought additional input from officers, and I thank them for their time that they spent with me post the policy committee so that I could better understand the financial presentation. And yes, we do support the 1,000 new homes target we introduced. Yes, we support the idea of purchasing some land to build more affordable homes, but we want social rents as well as affordable rents. And yes, we do support capital to spend on our properties and make sure that they continue to be decent homes. But what we don't support is the way in which these decisions are being taken today. They fall short on the way we as a council should be agreeing some very significant elements of one of the most important areas of our work, and fall short given the significance of the HRA budget. So, Chair, I hope that the administration will take on board the points of those of us who all do collectively align behind the housing objectives and what we want to achieve. But I hope you will appreciate that we are concerned about how we've arrived at the paper before you today that Cabinet is considering. Thank you for the opportunity, Chair, to speak this morning.
Thank you, Councillor Horrell. Members of Cabinet, have you any questions? No, I'm not seeing any hands going up. Any debate? Still there. Councillor Porter.
Thank you. The point that's been made about delivering homes that Councillor Lerney has expressed in this paper, and we as a Cabinet are most likely going to be endorsing. There is a query from TACT, and I'm wondering if Monica would like to express anything else from this to us now, or if she felt that when she was entitled to be at the housing meeting, whether she felt that she was able to make any comments. I think the problem we have at the moment is a communication problem because of the technology, which has previously not been there. And I wondered if Councillor Lerney has any, specifically, if Councillor Lerney has any ideas of how we could improve this going forward because of the likelihood of us continuing with the technology for another 6 months or so. It's obviously a very serious problem to TACT, and it's a serious problem therefore to us. And I wondered if we've got any way of finding a way through this problem.
Thank you, Councillor Porter. I wonder whether I might make a suggestion that perhaps the Chair of Business and Housing could have a conversation with TACT outside this meeting to take this forward, because obviously there is an issue there and we need to do what we can to resolve it. I think that's probably the way forward. I don't know whether, Monica, you do want to say anything further?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Yes, I think I didn't attend the last Business and Housing simply because the invite to attend went to an old email address. I did apologise to Councillor Lerney, and I do have normally monthly meetings with her when we can discuss things. But the tenant involvement team have worked really, really hard to get tenants on board with the virtual meetings. And I think that they feel at the moment that they're ticking boxes rather than being involved where they can discuss things. We always had the opportunity when there was new builds coming up, if you were purchasing that. We didn't always agree with the council, and that is our right. But I just feel that at the moment, as one member said to me yesterday, we are just paying lip service and being there to make up the numbers.
I wonder whether is Gilly Knight on the call still? I believe she was on the roll call when we started this conversation. Yes, Gilly, have you any comments you might be able to add?
Yes, of course. I have been in dialogue with Monica quite recently around her concerns and been talking with the tenant involvement team. I think Councillor Lerney summed it up at the beginning in that there is a barrier of just trying to engage with tenants through Teams. Some find it incredibly difficult to feel that it's a forum that perhaps they can openly talk in. It's also around timings a little bit. TACT have reduced the amount of meetings we have in order to try and get that to align with the various committees and papers that are coming. So we're looking at perhaps and Monica and I have discussed this around perhaps reintroducing more TACT meetings. There are benefits to Teams meetings as well. There are Monica herself has engaged with it, as has David, but we do appreciate that this means we're not reaching all of the TACT members, and that's something we're going to have to look at following, if we do continue to have Teams meetings. One of the areas we've thought about doing, because it can be quite daunting to speak and actually manage the barriers of muting and stuff like that sometimes. So we're actually looking at perhaps breakout rooms, chat rooms that tenants can then go and have a chat about a paper that perhaps an officer's presented amongst themselves, which I think used to work very well when we met in person, because people could chat to their neighbour and felt they could chat to us a little bit more easier in Teams. So it is on our radar. We're really disappointed, obviously, that Monica does and the rest of the TACT team don't feel as included. It's something we've always prided ourselves on doing. It is, compared to lots of local authorities, Monica is still sat here at Cabinet, which is, quite impressive in itself. But we do need to get the back work sorted as well.
Thank you very much. Thank you for that. Any questions, Cabinet members, or shall we move to any debate? I think Councillor Porter wants to say a few words.
Thank you. Yes, please. Just a very positive paper. I think we do realise, there may be difficulties, but there's also some very positive pieces in this paper. And I'd particularly like to support the creation of the Energy Officer to facilitate the Council's carbon reduction plan. I think it's really important that such a significant number of properties within the Winchester district, over 5,000 properties, should have someone that's helping people through the quite difficult position of managing their finances, but also improving the Council's carbon footprint. and their own carbon footprint. I think that's a really impressive part of this plan. And also for the investment of new housing developments. We do need to invest in the new housing. I gather we sell about 20 odd a year under the right to buy, but nevertheless, we need to keep ahead of the game if we are going to increase our stock. And there is absolutely no doubt that when residents are offered a council house, they believe they've hit the gold standard, and our housing always will be, and that's our aim as a council, that our housing is always the gold standard of affordable housing. So I really welcome this paper. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Porter. Councillor Ferguson.
Yes, thank you, Councillor Thompson. I also welcome this paper. Councillor Porter has already talked about the money that we are setting aside to invest in the retrofitting of our own properties, and I think we should really welcome that, as it speaks to our determination to actually tackle the climate emergency. 10 million was already a significant number, but with this additional 2.5 million, 13.2 million to be spent on retrofitting homes is really important, not just because of the carbon reduction, but also because it will decrease energy costs. And for a lot of families, their utility bills are greater than their rent, if not equal to them. I also really welcome our determination to keep building affordable homes, and I do echo Councillor Horrell's point that I'm also keen that we build homes for social rent. What we want in Winchester is for people from all backgrounds, from all levels of income, to be able to live here and to work here. So making sure that they can afford to live here is an important ambition. So I really welcome this paper because it puts that front and centre. So I fully endorse it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Ferguson. Any other Cabinet members wishing to speak? Councillor Lerney, do you want to close the debate?
Yes, please. Thank you, Chairman. I would say about business and housing that I actually had some very good feedback from members, I think, from members about the presentations that were given. I think one of the issues about good scrutiny is that you have to have an understanding of what you're scrutinising. And I think it is really important that as part of that scrutiny process, we do build up the knowledge that members have about the services. I think people were very surprised at the range of housing activity that we actually carry on. I think the point about social rents is very important. We all do want to have social rents, however, that can't be at the expense of fewer affordable homes, full stop. We will continue to keep our rents as low as possible and continue to seek government grant to move homes from affordable to social rents. We're also looking at driving down the cost of development, which right now is quite high. If we can reduce the cost of our homes, then we can make them viable at lower rents. And I think that without reducing the quality, that's a really important thing for us to aim for. And that's certainly something that the new homes team is going to be looking at very hard going forward. So with that, I'm really pleased to hear support from other members of Cabinet for the proposed business plan, and look forward to taking it and the budget to Council in due course. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Lerney. And yes, I too would like to endorse and welcome this report, especially the commitment to the carbon reduction measures that we will be putting in place. It's something that I have championed for a number of years, and I'm really pleased that at last we are actually going to do something about it. So that's really good news. Could we please now move to the recommendations on pages 59 and 60 of the agenda pack? And can I have Cabinet's agreement to recommendations 1 through to 10? Are we agreed?
Agreed.
Agreed.
Thank you very much. And thank you for all those that have made contributions to that item. Moving on, we now come to item number 10, the Q2 monitoring. And could I ask Councillor Todd to introduce the paper, please?
Yes, thank you, Leader, and thank you for the chance to introduce this paper. As those of you who've read it will know, there are 5 main sections to it. There's an introductory narrative, there's a financial update, which I won't talk to in much detail because I know that Councillor Cutler has effectively provided that context earlier in the meeting. There are the performance KPIs. There's an update on the status of the major projects, and we've expanded the definition of major projects, so it's not just about building projects. And there is an update on the COVID KPIs. The narrative continues to show good progress on our main objectives, and it does so in a context where in a lot of them you will see that not only have we had to deliver on the long-term strategic objectives that we set ourselves when we defined this council plan, but also have been delivering on the needs of COVID. And we've deliberately also structured our response to COVID in line with the council plan, since there's a lot of overlapping priorities. So if we take the narrative section, it shows that in Q2 we continue to make strong progress on the climate emergency. We have a new pattern of working with many more people working from home. We've accelerated the tree planting programme. That was the quarter where we really pushed off and moved fast on the electric vehicle charging scheme, and it highlights the progress that was being made on recycling. The other changes which have had a dramatic effect, the renewable energy change, for example, shifting the council's use of energy to renewable energy, came slightly earlier, but is obviously still reflected in what happens in Q2. Living well is the area where you'll see most clearly this sort of double approach, not only the interventions that we've taken as a council to support the most vulnerable as a consequence of COVID, which continue to be a major factor in the second quarter, but also the work that was done in the second quarter to reopen the leisure centre, something that we've effectively managed, even though there are many councils that haven't. Homes for All is an area that we've just talked about in some depth, so I'm not sure that it makes sense to add more, though Councillor Lerney may want to refer to that later on. And again, in the vibrant economy, what's striking when you look at the priorities laid out for the second quarter, and I don't know if is that we have this mixture of the short-term support that was necessary and vital to support businesses as a consequence of COVID, while also continuing to drive forward the wider strategic agenda to ensure that our district thrives in the longer term. And Councillor Ferguson may wish to provide some perspective on that. And then we also get to the services question. And as colleagues know, it has been a big priority for us to maintain high quality services during the challenges of COVID. And for example, you can see that even though, again, we kept collecting the bins and continue to see a good trend on the missed bin collection stats going down on a quarterly basis, and importantly, actually recycling levels going up. I won't say much about the financial update because we've already covered that. There's something I probably need to make clear. When I talked earlier about the county council, the auditors having refused to sign off the county council's accounts, I should of course make clear that the auditors, our auditors, have signed off the city council's accounts, which I think provides a useful basis for comparison. We know that for example, that anti-EU campaigners always used to talk with great enthusiasm about accounts not being signed off by auditors for many years, although they were signed off towards the end of our time in the EU. But I do think it is genuinely a matter of concern, and I know it was a concern amongst the recent county council meeting about the fact that the county council's accounts have not been signed off by their auditors in time for the legal deadline. The next section after the financial update refers to the KPIs. One I'd like to draw your attention to there is the recycling KPI. We've taken 2018-19 as the base recycling level, which was the year before we started to introduce the changes that we'd campaigned for many years. One of the things that's striking about the 2018-19 level of recycling is it's actually lower than recycling levels were when the Liberal Democrats last ran the council in 2010 and 11. There were 8 years of decline in recycling levels, but the early figures for 2019-20 and certainly what you're seeing there for 2020-21 are showing a very encouraging increase, which is something we owe a great debt of gratitude to, first to the council officers involved, and secondly to our colleagues at our partners at BIFA, who have worked so hard during lockdown despite the very difficult circumstances. So happy to take any questions there might be on the KPIs that people want to probe further on, although I'm sure colleagues will know well the ones for their own area. Then we come on to the major projects that we have as a council. And again, to highlight that historically we've only seen major projects in terms of buildings, and now we do try and look more broadly. So for example, there is an outline on progress on the carbon neutrality programme. There is as well, which is an absolutely vital and fundamental project to the council. There's an outline on progress on the local plan and SIL, and new homes delivery and the movement strategy, as well as Central Winchester, which is obviously, and the Sport and Leisure Park, which are two vital major construction projects, and those also can be talked about at length if people wish. And then finally, as a sort of extra set of KPIs and performance indicators, we have the impact of COVID on council services, showing firstly our performance in getting grants out to local businesses, something that we've had as an extremely high priority, and we owe a big debt of gratitude to the finance team for their efficiency and effectiveness in getting the money to the businesses that need it at pace. The referrals to the local resource centre and community support that we've been actively involved in giving, what the impact has been on our council services in terms of housing and homelessness, and then also performance on waste collection and the key statistics there as well. So that's the overview of what's in front of us today. Happy to take any comments and questions. This time, for the first time, it also went to the performance panel, which is a subcommittee of the scrutiny committee. The minutes of those are attached. The items in there are in progress, and indeed we can say that, for example, the reference to air quality data, which is available online, has been covered in a recent report to the Environment Committee. So if people have any questions, I'm happy to take them. If people want to say anything, then I'm happy to hear it.
Thank you very much, Councillor Todd, for that very great introduction, actually, to what is quite an important paper in what's going on in the council. I've now got Councillor Horrell on my list who wishes to speak on this item.
Good morning again, and thank you, Chair, for allowing me to speak this morning. As the chair of the panel that Councillor Todd referred to, I would like to make a couple of points regarding the scrutiny report. Importantly, I want to highlight some of the issues rather than just the political statements that Councillor Todd has been making. Clearly there's an election coming. We spent some time considering recovery and restoration planning post-COVID, particularly as it impacted the economy and the various businesses in our district, and also the activities around rough sleeping. So just to ensure that those listening understand that there has been a very detailed discussion about that. Specific issues that did arise from the report was probably the lack of detail on the movement strategy, and there has been a further update to a recent policy committee which has been helpful, but a request that ongoing because there has been further discussion in the recent days about the movement strategy, that both the Hampshire and Winchester representatives, council representatives who are on those committees make every effort to ensure that all members and members of the public are fully aware of the decisions being made, given the movement strategy is such an important piece of work for our district. We also asked for a more detailed update on flood alleviation schemes. When floods, terrible things happen, we all work tirelessly for that period, but over time the alleviation schemes, which are crucial to ensuring that there are less problems should anything happen in the future, sometimes don't always have the profile that they should, and we've asked for that information to be made available in whichever forum is most appropriate, either through the scrutiny committee itself or policy committees. And also we've asked to make sure that we consider engagement, and it's come up this morning, in the current time where many of us are used to being on Teams or Zooms or WebExes, whatever it might be. That isn't the natural place for all of our residents, and to ensure that we have effective communication. We don't just tick a box, as has been suggested this morning for some efforts, but actually that we truly go the extra mile to ensure that we use all our knowledge and information to ensure that engagement is appropriate right across the council on all of our projects. And finally, Chair, I just wanted to raise the issue, which I thought was highly inappropriate at the recent scrutiny meeting, which was the sort of hijacking of the panel, the suggestion in scrutiny that we should change the terms of reference, that somehow this was all being done behind closed doors and without the appropriate processes in place. There has been clarity provided post the scrutiny meeting, but I thought actually in the spirit of an open and transparent council and administration, your side failed dismally that evening in terms of raising the issues. There was absolutely no indication prior to that session that there was any concern from members of the panel or indeed your broader membership. And I think that's a pity, because that does not put Winchester City Council in a good light as far as the general public is concerned. I can only assure everyone listening that we will do our very best to ensure that there is proper scrutiny, thoroughly done in detail by the panel and reported back via member briefings, scrutiny committee or policy committees, whichever is appropriate, and we will be guided by officers as to the appropriate process to take. Thank you, Chair, for the opportunity to address you this morning.
Thank you very much, Councillor Horrell. Members of Cabinet, have you any questions on the paper? or any comments that you'd like to make? Councillor Todd.
Yes, Leader. Thank you very much indeed. Just a few comments, maybe to just address the points raised by Councillor Horrell. In terms of lack of detail on the movement strategy, we are somewhat constrained on this in terms of the joint agreement between ourselves and Hampshire County Council, in terms of how that engagement and happens. There is a board meeting on Friday. There will be papers published showing what the round 2 outcomes of the project are, and as I've previously, as Councillor Horrell admitted, this is a project which was taken to the Health and Environment Policy Committee for review in as much as we could, with as much detail as we could, in line with the fact that this is a joint project with the County Council. I think it's important to note, though, that we as a council have deliberately tried to do our elements of the movement programme in a very open and consultative way. I mean, for example, there has been, somebody was asking about this the other day, I think the number of public meetings that we've had with businesses, residents, for example, with the square and Great Minster Street closure, which relates to the movement strategy, is by far the highest of any scheme that we're aware of in Hampshire that really comes out of the Emergency Active Travel Fund, certainly than there has been for any scheme in Winchester, and the City Council has been much more open and involving in terms of how it's run things than sometimes the County Council has been. In terms of the flood alleviation schemes, I mean, I think that is a classic for scrutiny, as I'm sure Councillor Horrell knows. The county has announced a Section 19 review of the flooding incident in August, which had a major impact in the High Street and in residential areas across the city. That type of flooding review does very firmly sit with the County Council, but again, I think there's a point to be made, which I'm happy to raise with them, to say that it makes sense for district councillors to have a chance to meet the officers running that review and understand what they're concluding. In terms of wider strategic flood alleviation schemes, Councillor Porter, I know, has been very actively involved in those, but again, the lead authority on Hampshire for flooding is Hampshire, and but again, I would welcome, I think, the more that can be done to encourage them to engage with district and parishes on schemes that affect their area, the better it will be. I was surprised at her attack on what happened at the recent scrutiny committee. Scrutiny itself should not be beyond scrutiny, and I'm sorry that she felt that it was unfair, but I have to say I have a lot of sympathy with members, and I was as disturbed as they were that effectively we'd perhaps accidentally, and I'm sure this wasn't her intent, but it was also something that she wasn't challenging, we'd accidentally ended up with a secret scrutiny committee meeting behind closed doors with secret papers which weren't published and made available at the earliest opportunity to the wider public, as well as to councillors in a conventional way on the website where the public could look at it. And certainly that was not something that I think we felt complacent about, and independent of the decisions made by the scrutiny committee, it's certainly the view of Cabinet that in future we do not support a position where effectively the numbers that are being looked at by the scrutiny committee and the numbers that are being looked at by the performance panel should not be visible to the public at the widest possible opportunity. And the more eyes that can look in on how we're performing and challenge us and critique that, and us above and beyond the yeah, looking on us and critique us above and beyond the work that's done by the scrutiny committee, the better it is as far as we're concerned. But certainly I think she's wrong to be complacent about a secret scrutiny committee meeting behind closed doors looking at secret papers which the public don't have access to. The one thing I would say, just to finish up in terms of openness and engagement, what I can promise is that as soon as the next round of information is agreed with the County Council to be made more widely available, I will absolutely seek to put in place a member briefing as promised to the performance panel to ensure that the latest information and the latest thinking of what is likely to come next on the movement strategy is made available. And I would stress that at every stage of the process, it has been the City Council that has led the way in driving for greater openness, involvement and consultation on that project.
Thank you very much, Councillor Todd. Councillor Porter.
Thank you. To some extent, Councillor Todd's just mentioned it, but I just wanted to raise about the Derngate Flood Alleviation Scheme. And I wanted to specifically thank Darren Lewis and the team for working so hard to get this underway and also to get it to a point where we believe that the city will be as safe as it can be this winter from flooding in that direction at least. He had to work very hard with the EA and with the contractors to get the work done to a point where we do feel more confident this winter, and I'm really just wanted to say a huge thank you to him. I also wanted to say how distressing it is for the public when they see the drains outside their house filling up, and also when the water is so heavy that it just cannot, that drain is just not big enough. And the county were good in recognising the day after that terrible flood that came down the High Street and in other places right across the district, all sorts of places were affected, of how much more proactive they need to be. And they have been in the recent months since August. So I'm really looking forward to really significant improvements to that work over the winter. So I'm pleased that that section is green, but it really doesn't describe the huge amount of work that's having to go on in order to prevent people's homes from flooding this winter. So thank you. I just want to say thank you to everybody involved, both at the city and at the county council. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Porter. Councillor Cutler.
Thank you, Leader. There were just two areas I wanted to raise. As Councillor Todd pointed out, I have had covered most areas of the financial report here, but there are two areas which I think is important to congratulate officers really for the astonishing work that they've done. The first was the internal audit opinion on our business continuity plans. It is very unusual for us to get substantial opinions in which is the highest level of audit opinion, internal audit opinion, because we had such good business continuity planning and it was implemented so well during the pandemic from the beginning of lockdown. The second area, which Councillor Todd has referred to, but I'd just like to really add to it on external audit. It was a real struggle. The auditors were very delayed, and the amount of work put in by the finance team was quite astonishing to get the accounts signed off within the deadline, only just within the deadline, but also signed off with an unqualified opinion, i.e. there were no problems with them. And I think that is quite an astonishing achievement given the circumstances. So I'd just like that recorded publicly.
Thank you very much, Councillor Cutler. If there are no other Cabinet members wishing to speak, perhaps we could move to the recommendation, which is actually just to note this report and the progress that we've achieved during Q2. Cabinet members,
Agreed.
Jackie, agreed? Oh, you
Agreed.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Agreed.
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 We now come on to item number 11, which is the council tax reduction scheme. Councillor Cutler, would you like to introduce this?
Thank you, Leader. The council tax reduction scheme, we brought a paper to council in September recommending the implementation of quite dramatic changes to the council tax reduction scheme from the 1st of April and asking for it to go to consultation. This paper describes the results of the consultation and puts forward amendments based on that consultation for recommendation that for approval to go to council in the spring. The need for reform of the council tax reduction scheme was explained quite clearly in September, but is around universal credit causing huge administrative burdens, but also significantly affecting claimants' ability to make claims in time, and also the huge amount of changes that happen within universal credit. Our old system was reactive. It required constant changing under the new universal credit process. And so the proposal has been to move to a banded system that is more suitable for universal credit and has far lower administration costs because of a requirement for fewer changes. The consultation was on the principle of the banding, the numbers of inclusions and disregards within the scheme, and also reducing the cap on savings from £16,000 to £6,000. The consultation broadly supportive of nearly all the recommendations except for the cut in the savings limit. This had been proposed initially partly to reduce the cost of the scheme and to enable a larger hardship fund, but also because it would cause additional administration maintaining the £16,000 limit. In response to the consultation, we have reviewed that position and the team remodelled, and we have concluded that we can maintain the £16,000 saving limit. So we're recommending a scheme that includes the £16,000 saving limit rather than the reduced £6,000. This will require some additional administration, and it will reduce the level of the hardship fund available. But we feel it's important to have listened to the consultation and to the responses, and we will, this scheme has to be reviewed every year, and we will look to see what those effects are as the scheme is implemented and revisit it later in the year. I'd really like to thank the Revenue and Benefits team for the huge amount of work that's gone into this. You can see how many pages are appended to this report. They've been under tremendous pressure all through this year, particularly with business rates and getting out the business grants. And so to be able to have done this work as well, I think is a tremendous achievement. I commend the paper to Cabinet.
Thank you very much, Councillor Cutler. I have no speakers on this item. Cabinet, I know that we debated this quite substantially a few months ago before it went out to consultation, but do you have any comments or questions to make or any debate? Councillor Porter.
Thank you. Very pleased to support this report, and particularly pleased to see the council listening to the responses from the consultation, and for Councillor Cutler to have taken action on that. It's really heartening when the consultation is meaningful and isn't just a tick box exercise, and so it's really good to see that we have been able to accommodate the concerns of the residents and the tenants that have responded to this. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Porter. I don't see any other hands indicating they wish to speak. So could we move to the recommendation, which is on page 154, that we agree and recommend to Council the new income banded council tax reduction scheme for working age applicants with effect from 1st of April 2021 as set out in the report. Are we agreed?
Agreed.
Agreed?
Agreed.
Agreed.
Thank you very much. That's agreed. Okay. Right, moving swiftly on, we now come to item number 12, the local plan action plan. Can I ask Councillor Porter please to introduce the paper?
Thank you very much, Leader. Good morning, everybody. Adrian Fox is at the meeting today, the Strategic Planning Lead Manager, and to go through the item in more detail, but I'd like to just start by introducing this report and the context of it. Through the summer, we were ready to place before the public a consultation on a series of issues and options for the local plan, when we were expecting to deliver around 670 homes a year. Just a few days before that publication, 2 government consultations were issued which turned planning on its head. And the first proposal would result in Winchester's local plan needing to find land for over 1,020 homes per year. That's an increase of over 50% on the original figure. And this proposal would have changed the face of the local plan completely, requiring over 5,000 more homes in the planning period. And actually, it's very opportune that this morning we heard that the government is going to rethink that dreaded algorithm. They're going to create a different algorithm. We don't know what that is yet. We have absolutely no idea, but we do understand it's going to make quite a change. So actually, it's very sensible that we didn't go out with those strategic issues and options in September. It would have completely confused the public and would have sent the wrong message back to us when they made that consultation. So, but we did object to those numbers at the time and the method by which they're calculated. And the government algorithm we objected to was based really not on housing need or types, but on non-affordability, which we felt was wrong. The second consultation was the white paper, which completely overturned our current local plan system. And we were advised that the number of homes will be confirmed by Christmas and the legislation for the new local plan process would be in place by 2022. But to date, we haven't heard any more on the second matter. Meanwhile, I'm pleased to say the Chief Planning Officer for the country, seeing the delays and the confusion it's caused, has told local authorities to proceed with their local plan as well as they can. So this authority, can I make it very clear, wants a new local plan to be in place by 2023, to be valid until 2038. And the local plan is now on the council priority list, and it's very importantly a council priority. The strategic planning team led by Adrian Fox has devised this local plan action plan as a way forward so that we can pivot between the 2 stars of local plan as necessary. And I just want to thank Adrian and his team for the hard work and the consideration this is taking to plan for one method, but be conscious that it may end up being by a different method. This paper that we're reading today went to the local plan action group, advisory group for comment before publication. And understanding planning documentation is not always easy for the reader, although it's often easy for the writer. So I welcomed comments at that paper. There is one point, there is a potential for some confusion about the status of the red, green and amber markings on page 386 and then 396 onwards. They indicate the knowns and unknowns and the timing, and therefore the risks as the government changes the local plan process. But in our performance management, we've got it as the status as of today. And so that may have caused some confusion. And for this reason, we'll be reviewing the colours of that presentation for clarity before publishing it on the website. So the red, amber and green on the local plan action plan indicate the certainty of knowing something and the risk of not knowing something because it's a part of the future government policy. So work on the actions in the paper is already taking place, and a new strategic issues and on priorities, I'm calling it the STRIP in my head, strategic issues and priorities paper, is coming forward. I'd like to reiterate it will discuss the planning principles on which the plan will be based, but it won't be able to discuss the specific numbers of homes or the employment land. The strategic issues and priority document will be presented to LPAG before Cabinet in January. And meanwhile, amongst the specific works required at this stage, the dedicated website is being prepared and conversations about local communities have started with parish councils. Also, the Vision for Winchester document was well received. The final document, Handbook 3, will be presented to the Town Forum in January. It will form part of the evidence plan for the local plan, and I'm really pleased to say that the Town Forum will be instrumental in developing its own action plan starting now. An update briefing for Town Forum and parishes will take place soon after the January Cabinet, when we're looking at the strategic issues and priorities, and all members will be briefed too, ready so that paper, that consultation paper, can go out to the public for consultation in the early spring. Thank you. Mr. Fox, would you like to make any comment?
Good morning, everybody. No, just to add that we are trying to find our way through obviously a myriad of uncertainty, hence why we have produced the local plan. It is an action plan to try and plot out the future. It's not talking about specific sites, but it is obviously a work programme for my team, because we are very conscious that we need to look at the horizon. There are some key things and key benefits within the consultation documents that the government consulted on recently, such as obviously getting ourselves digital ready, obviously thinking about how we engage with the local community and design codes and things like that. So there are some really positive things in the white paper that we really want to embrace as a council and move forward. But I'm happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, both Councillor Porter and Mr. Fox. I have a number of councillors who wish to speak on this item. The first up is Councillor Hutchison.
Good morning, and thank you very much indeed for giving me the opportunity to say a few words. First of all, I'd really like to say I welcome this paper. I think it's absolutely excellent, and I think what I really wanted to do was to highlight the work of the vision and the work that refers to the Town Forum. The paper is very much orientated towards the parishes with not much mention of the Town Forum, so I particularly appreciated what Councillor Porter has just said, and on the basis that the Town Forum is going to be preparing its own plan, I think a number of the questions that I had prepared and had wanted possibly to raise become somewhat irrelevant and will be covered by that plan. So I very much welcome that, and I think I won't go ahead with those particular points at this moment in time. I think there are other more important things to think about. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Councillor Hutchison. Councillor Bell.
Hello, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, good morning.
Okay, thank you. Good morning. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. You will be aware, Cabinet will be aware of my continuing concern in relation to the emerging local plan and proposed development south of Winchester. Very good news this morning. I know it's already been mentioned. I understand that we are now going back to 2017 Theresa May formula, i.e. reduced 35% rather than 50% and so on. However, whatever's announced today, it would have been helpful for our officers, I think, if that had been announced rather earlier, and we cannot let our guard down locally. I'm aware that today's agenda item relates to the update from strategic planning and the draft action plan, which is picking its way as it has to around the lack of certainty from central government. But my specific concerns relate to the emerging local plan itself, the SHELA 2020, which I know is a few months back now, which is one of the base documents to this process, and the private Royal Down proposal for the land between Oliver's Battery and Hursley. But it will be more relevant generally. There's a great need for clear and unsensational information on these matters. And I thank Councillor Porter, Cabinet Member for Built Environment and Wellbeing, for the helpful statement of clarification that she has issued to parish councils in my ward and to other local organisations, and for offering to speak to these organisations in person, virtually of course. I urge our strategic planning team and communication staff to make that information which is currently available more easily accessible on the City Council website. I know a new website is planned for the new year, possibly not till February, so that wider consultation can be managed online. That's good, but it's a long time to wait for those residents already anxious. The various reports and presentations from the local planning advisory group and from today's action plan, the emerging strategic and issues document when it arrives, priorities document recurs, once agreed, should be placed visibly on the website and not depend on knowing which meeting agenda they were originally attached to. We did this effectively for the last local plan. We've done it for the major projects. We can do it for the current local plan as it emerges, whether or not you have a new website in the offing for February. The Sheila 2020 as drawn up, no doubt conforms to legal norms, but there are serious omissions in terms of how each land area is assessed. For example, whilst conservation area and listed building are categories on the assessment list, these are ignored if they're the other side of the fence. It appears to be sufficient to draw a line around the gardens of listed buildings in order for them to be discounted. The large land area south of Oliver's Battery actually contains a listed farm building, not disclosed as it happens, but it also abuts listed buildings at Shawlands, Bunstead Lane, Hursley Main Road. Secondly, whilst historic parks and gardens is a category, there's no mention of historic long distance footpaths, not just rights of way, of which there are very few in Hursley Parish, but ancient routes such as the Monarch's Way, which traces the escape route of Charles II after his defeat at the Battle of Worcester in 1652. Part of a nationally acclaimed long-distance historic pathway. It comes through Hursley Village, arriving from the southwest and going through and on to the east, and including the said land area. The Sheila mentions existing gaps in the current local plan, which applies significantly. Sorry, I should have said not. It does not mention local gaps. And contains the local gaps between Compton Shawford, Oliver's Battery and Hursley. If these aspects were considered and listed, then these land submissions would acquire several more yellow triangles. It's very important that the Sheila address all constraints. If the categories I've mentioned are not in the national list, then I would suggest that Winchester should go above and beyond these in order to make the local Sheila fit for purpose. I'm watching the countdown of the clock. I've got a lot more to say, but I will stop there. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Bell, and I appreciate that you finished right on time there. Well done. I now call on Councillor Brooke.
Good morning. Thank you for allowing me to speak today.
Morning.
So whilst I'm pleased that there is finally some progress in the local plan, I'm extremely dismayed at the complete lack of communication that's been made with members of the public and parish councils. In 2018, when under my portfolio this local plan making began, there were quarterly parish council briefings and absolute transparency and collaboration on thinking behind housing allocations and the reasons for this. The options paper was due to be brought for consultation at the end of 2019. Since then, it feels that this administration has kicked the can further and further down the road. The Appendix A starts with a list of excuses for the delay, but at the end of 2019, the only applicable one was the Climate Emergency Declaration, which would have had minimal impact on discussing possible options with parishes and residents. Instead, here we are a year beyond that, with worry amongst our residents, a significant petition about Royal Down, which proper engagement earlier on with the parish council could have minimised the concern amongst those residents. And there's also political scaremongering by the administration aimed at the Northford district over the motion brought to council for Greenbelt, and absolutely no real progress. This has been a challenging year for all of us, and there's been a government white paper, but throughout this, we've known the minimum housing number we are likely to be faced with, and regular discussions could and should have continued with parishes and residents to shape the thinking behind it. This has not been done. The dithering delay and lack of transparency is having a real detrimental impact on our district at a time when we already have enough challenges to contend with. We supported the objections to the government papers, and I disagree with the opening statement that discussing our current thinking in the summer would have confused the public. I think that statement underestimates their intelligence, and if it had been introduced as our previous thinking based on the previous numbers and caveated with the government white paper consultations, we may have been somewhat further forward than we are today. The local plan is supposed to create certainty within the planning process. This administration have only been successful in creating quite the opposite: uncertainty, worry and anger. The action plan in this paper contains very little more than any other local action plan would, and other than a few actions of awaiting outcome from government consultations. It's no longer acceptable to our residents to continue to blame the government, the previous administration or the county for this administration's failings, repeatedly trying to gain political ground whilst achieving very little. I'd ask, as I have several times before, that this administration seeks to engage more with its parish councils and residents. This action plan makes no allowance for this engagement. Creating a new website might be useful, but doesn't mean it will be informative or useful to the residents. And the strategic issues and priorities consultation planned for early 2021 had already been started in 2018 and could have continued throughout 2019, but has not. So in summary, after 20 months of this administration, I'd have loved to have been here before you, supporting this, how pleased I am with the progress and how great it's been to engage with our residents properly. However, instead, all I can see is backward steps, minimal communication, no transparency, no clarity, much confusion, and no apology made for any of that. This is not good enough. I'd like this to be addressed. Thank you for your time this morning.
Thank you very much, Councillor Brooke. I would take issue with your comments regarding parish councils. I think we've been engaging with them very well on this matter, because all the parish briefings I've been attending, the local plan has been an item on the agenda, and we have been keeping parishes very well informed on that. Members of Cabinet, have you any questions on this paper or any comments to make? No, I'm waiting for, no hands are going up. Councillor Todd.
Thank you, Leader. I mean, I would just like to reinforce, I think, the point that that Councillor Porter made. The idea that's just been expressed that we should have ignored the housing target set by government, outlined in a policy paper, which made it very clear that they were planning to introduce it at very high speed, when that number looked set to have a dramatic effect on the options in front of us. It is just bizarre. And I think also the Conservative opposition need to work out what they want us to do as far as reacting to the government is concerned. Earlier on, I think Councillor Godfrey suggested that we should rely on the government and we should treat every word they say as gospel. The idea that they should do whatever it takes to support local government, when the experience of the county and our own experience is that that needs to be viewed with some caution. But the idea that we should sign up to the idea that government would do whatever it takes to support us financially, but at the same time, Councillor Brooke is suggesting that we should ignore the government when they put forward a number, 10,000 houses for the district for Winchester District, which would have an extremely radical and direct effect on the planning choices sitting in front of us. And the idea that we should just ignore what the government has stated its intent to be in terms of working on our planning process and pretend that it hadn't happened is bizarre in the extreme. Yes, we have faced delays, but we faced delays because the government has been all over the place in terms of its plans for planning numbers, and planning process, even though they have a dramatic and radical effect on what it is local government will be required to do. So I don't think there's any need for us to be apologetic about that. We've been honest and open with everybody as to why we took the decision to delay. I don't remember Councillor Brooke arguing at the time that we should ignore the government. It seems to be something that she only seems happy to say now that the government have withdrawn the previous figures. So I think the approach that Councillor Porter is taking and the engagement approach and the route forward is appropriate, well thought through, and operating on the fastest, pragmatic and sensible time that is possible, consistent with the level and depth of engagement that we need. And I strongly support what's proposed.
Thank you very much, Councillor Todd. I'd also like to, just before any other members of Cabinet wish to jump in, but on page 381, paragraph 2.18, engaging with people, just like to point out that the white paper, the government's white paper, is centred around allowing people access to local plan material online. And so that is what we are planning to do. So again, perhaps Councillor Brooke wants us to go against what the government are recommending that we all do. But that is going to be the way of things by her very own government. Other members of Cabinet, do you have any further comments you wish to make, or can I call on Councillor Porter to perhaps sum up and we can move to the recommendations? Councillor Porter, you're online.
Thank you. I take what Councillor Bell has said, and certainly we have been talking to members of parish councils, I think many of whom have been perhaps unnecessarily made aware of the issues from individual developers, and we've made it very clear all the way through at every single public meeting that a Sheila is a statement of a wish list effectively by a developer to develop his land, his or her land. It is not the county, it's not the city council's plan. And so I just want to keep reiterating that, please. It is not the city council's plan. I also just wanted to say, like Councillor Brooke, I would love to be sitting here with a completed plan, but unfortunately a general election and then the change of policy, my government has made that an extremely difficult process. I feel that we're actually offering the public the opportunity to take part in the way in which most people are taking part in consultations at the moment, which is online, and we feel a dedicated website is absolutely the best way to do it. And when we've talked to parish councils about this, and they have been at parish council meetings and parish council briefings with us every quarter, not you're implying they weren't, but they were. Most people have been very, very complimentary about the events, and also we've had individual conversations with parish councils like Colden Common and Hursley and Oliver's Battery and many others as well, to talk about their plans for the future and Denmead. So I'm making this recommendation today because we want to move forward on our plan, and I'm making a recommendation that we approve the local plan action plan. We note that the government's yet to confirm the housing supply, but hopefully that sounds like it's literally on the horizon. And we agree that the officers continue to work on the local plan, and that we bring another report on the strategic issues and priorities to our January Cabinet. And we do also note that unfortunately now additional funding will be required to implement the local plan action plan, and to note that also this is a council priority. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Porter. Members, can we now move to the recommendations on page 373 and 374? Are we agreed?
Agreed.
Agreed?
Agreed.
Thank you very much. And thank you to all the members who've taken part in that discussion. As you're aware, we're now coming up to 11:30, but as I stated at the very beginning of the meeting, I think we've got really important business to consider, which can't really be held over. We've got important decisions to take, so we will be extending the meeting so that we can have an opportunity to take those decisions. So the next item up is item number 13, the doctor's surgery. Now there is an exempt paper added onto this, which I believe we will have to go into exempt for. Unless we all feel we can deal with it in open session without raising questions on the exempt paper. I do have a councillor who is down to speak, Councillor Miller, who wanted to speak on you wanted to speak on
Councillor Lumby to speak on this.
Councillor Lumby, apologies, yes. So I just wanted to make clear whether he's already come on screen. Which bit of the paper were you wanting to speak on, Councillor Lumby?
I put down to speak on both.
Right.
Actually have been having discussions with the estates and legal teams. I've had some wonderful feedback and help from them. So I only need to speak in relation to this session. So please don't go into exempt solely on my account. I think we can deal with it all without needing to refer to it.
That's lovely. Thank you very much. That's really helpful. Okay, thank you. Okay, so I now call on Councillor Lerney, please, to introduce the report.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm really pleased to be able to bring this report before you today. Developing medical facilities has been one of those areas where the more I've found out, the more I realise that I need to find out. In the past, a doctor could start a practice in any old building, but particularly in the new COVID-shaped world, it has become an increasingly specialist area with an understanding not only of how to specify the detail of medical facilities, but of how to negotiate with the NHS over funding needed. It's certainly become clear that the council has taken the right decision when it decided not to develop this site itself. The council's worked closely with the doctors to identify a preferred bidder, and we are confident that this disposal will bring not only better medical facilities to the heart of Winchester, but also a building of the highest possible environmental standards. The proposed disposal is leasehold, which will give reassurance to those concerned about the long-term future of the site. And in addition, the preferred bidder is a long-term holder of medical facilities rather than just a developer or property investor. While it will still take time to complete all the detailed design and legal work needed before a start on site, our agreement to sell takes us a considerable step closer to achieving the high quality medical facilities we all want to see in the heart of our town. So thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much, Councillor Lerney. Yes, I'm really pleased that we're bringing forward this paper today. It really shows progress on delivering a new doctor's surgery, which I know everybody within Winchester and the council are really keen to see. Councillor Lumby, you wish to speak? on this item.
Thank you, Leader. I wonder whether you were going to talk for me, and you were doing a very good job. So feel free to keep going. And if I may say a few words, if that's okay, I won't keep you for very long. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. Thank you, actually, also particularly to the estates and legal teams for answering the various queries I had on the paper so efficiently and fully. It's been really, really helpful to understand, and I think they've done a great job of getting us to this stage. This is a project, as Councillor Lerney says, which has been going on for some time, and which I think we all very much support and want to see brought forward. I'm personally particularly delighted that the leasehold structure, which I was pushing for before, has been adopted. That's wonderful. Hope we can repeat that elsewhere. I think that was a great way to protect our assets and to protect the area around our assets going forward. It's something that we should definitely do with the CWR proposals and development as that comes forward. So please, more of that. In terms of where we are, great to have reached this stage and very much welcome that and welcome the report. Let's however, not be too congratulatory quite yet, because there is still a long way to go. There is a lot of work to be done to document the terms, the lease, the agreement, and so on and so forth. And there is a condition within the agreement which needs to be satisfied. So there is still a lot to be done. And I very much urge everyone to keep working to get the documentation agreed as soon as possible and to get that condition satisfied as soon as possible so that work can start with a minimum amount of delay and we can get this long awaited and much anticipated doctor's surgery up and running. Thank you very much indeed, and I support the paper. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Lumbey, and it's great to have your support there. I think it's something that the whole council will welcome. Members of Cabinet, have you any questions on the paper? No, I'm not seeing any questions. Can I suggest then that we go to the recommendations? But I would also like to just point out that we have two exempt appendices, one on the bids and evaluation summary and the other one on draft heads of terms. If there are no questions on those particular appendices, and Councillor Lumbey has indicated that he doesn't need to speak on them. If there are no questions, we can then go straight to the recommendations and agree all those in open session. So
perhaps could you just indicate that,
yeah,
Chairman, that they've read and are happy with the content of those two exempt appendices in order that we may move to the recommendations? I don't believe we're hearing any questions.
We've read.
Okay.
We've read that and we're happy.
Thank you very much.
Read and agreed.
Thank you. So we'll move to the recommendations on page 411. Taking account of those exempt appendices too. Are we agreed?
Agreed.
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 Thank you very much. Thank you. That's brilliant. The next item, I believe, is the forward plan, which is one just for noting. So are we happy to note the forward plan?
Noted.
Agreed.
Noted.
Noted.
Noted. Okay, and the final item on the agenda was the exempt item at agenda item 16, which is the exempt part of the budget. If there are no questions on that from members of Cabinet, because I don't believe, although Councillor Miller has indicated he wishes to speak, he's not actually appeared at the meeting. If there are no councillors wishing to speak on this item, could we just agree it in open session rather than having to go into exempt? Happy to agree?
Very happy to agree.
Yeah, very happy to agree. Read and agreed.
Agreed.
Sensible.
Thank you very much. And that concludes the business on our agenda today, which, we had a number of very chunky items, and I thought we might be going on to, 12 o'clock at least. But anyway, thank you everyone for sticking with it and getting there in super quick time. So all that remains for me to say is happy Christmas to everybody, and I hope you stay healthy and have a lovely break over the Christmas New Year period, and see you all again in the new year. Goodbye.